because like I'm not anti-college, but I am anti people wasting their time and money on something that they don't need. You're staring down, a couple $100,000, and it's like, what are we getting out of it?
Why are we not offering students at that level, the college level, who want internships? Wouldn't our workforce be that much better? Wouldn't our GDP and all those data points that politicians love, and really, I mean, people living better, wouldn't they improve?
How can you not be screaming at the podcast right now? Look at this opportunity. Internships, work experiences, work integrated learning, work-based learning. Like, all the data's there.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education podcast, powered by UScience. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. Peter Hostrawser here with Alli Dahl. How are you, Alli? What's happening?
I mean, I'm just reeling from last week's episode. I'll set up this background and then you can set up the background of the background. So Peter and I, we go on LinkedIn, we're getting these posts about, I would say, top educational voices. She's sending me stuff, I'm sending you stuff. And I just was like, wow, this guy, Brandon, he's got a really interesting perspective. I was like, look at this post. And, we set up the episode, and then Peter's like, yeah, I met him in Switzerland 10 years ago. So what? You gotta tell our listeners a little bit more about this and the whole background.
Right. So I have his card when Brandon worked at Gallup 10 years ago. So it really is, if you look into the show notes, it's really the reason why this whole Disrupt Education movement podcast, it evolved into a podcast, started. So like I said, 10 years ago, a colleague of mine, amazing colleague, Dr. Tyrone Williams, was putting together an EF tour, and he was like, it was right after Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk came out, and they were speaking, and it was Education is a Human Right, I think it was called. And we were going to take our students across the pond over into through Europe. And we got enough money to help the students who couldn't make it, like who couldn't really afford anything like this, let alone clothes to wear on here. So we went that far for some students. And then some students, could just write the check. Their parents they had the means to do so, and anywhere and in between. So as we were talking, like I've known Brandon, like understanding like what he is doing, like reading his posts all the time. And I just looked down and on her show notes, and it said Gallup executive. And I'm like, wait a minute, you were the guy at our big conference at the end of that EF tour. What Education First is the company. They do amazing stuff. My daughter went on a tour with them to Australia and New Zealand. But it was just a lunch, and it was like, hey, if you guys want to, sit down and in the hall and grab your lunch and come on in. And there was, Switzerland's got really cool architecture. So they had this big wall up, and they had, he was putting up a lot of numbers, and a lot of it was gap numbers. And I still have some of the photos on my phone.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to like look up a lot of it was a path to school success, like what really made school successful back then. But a lot of this data is about experiential and deep learning has more than double the odds of being engaged in their work. Graduates who had that. So what he spoke about on the podcast last week, that data, it's been going on for 10 years. And so it just clicked. It was insane. Like, emotionally supported during colleges have more than double the odds of being engaged in their work, 3 times likely to be thriving in their well-being. This is before COVID, folks. Like this is before all that. And that's when I was just like, yes, yes, yes. And I don't know what it was, Allie, but when he jumped on screen last week, I was like, wait, that was you. So that's the story. But yeah, Brandon is an amazing guy. That's again when he was with Gallup, and he was just throwing these. I mean, obviously a data hound, man, somebody who really understands numbers. Um, and isn't that what we were in education? And I remember sitting there, and I'm just like looking around, like to all the other, educators basically around the world that were sitting there in this lunch. There wasn't a lot of students that were in there. This was more for the adults. And I was like, hello, is anybody seeing this? Like it was like, ah. So it was amazing. It was really amazing.
I love hearing about how, the podcast came to be and uh, people misunderstand the word coincidence, okay? It's a coincidence. It's two angles coming together,
Hmm.
like colliding. It's meant to be like so it's very full circle to have someone that, you know, it was doing similar work in a different space, but
Hmm.
like still in education. But and then you're in a different space, you're doing different work, but 10 years later, you're both still disrupting education in like, and pushing out stuff that was talked about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was what was really cool.
Yeah.
I will say Brandon threw down some stuff last week, grades and internships and work integrated learning
Hmm.
and industry related learning that I mean, I don't know where you want to open it up, but like the my favorite thing that I would start with was we need to value the learning from all work.
Yeah.
I was like mic drop,
Yeah. Now,
all work.
yeah, I am guilty, and I will tell you as an educator, I'm guilty of giving grade inflation. I mean, I am, right? It's like grading effort and whatever, not a lot of sauce to it. There's just, it's just surface level stuff. Um, and but what was happening at that time in my career was we had a small business management course at Oak Park and River Forest High School, and I loved it because it was a blank slate, right? This was before incubator programs were evolving, which are amazing programs. Shout out to them, Uncharted Learning. But one of the things that we were doing in classes, the small business management class was we did a couple of weeks of basically this is what business management looks like, and here's all the data and the checkpoints that we need to do. And then we just said, okay, well, you guys are going to go find each class in classes, they were around 25 students. So each class had, and I usually had two per semester, is going to find an organization, not for profit, and we're going to raise funds because we wrote a grant. One of our superintendents, assistant superintendents, got us some Perkins grant money, and we received well, this was before that. We actually had to order T-shirts, and we sold T-shirts with like logos or something on it, and the proceeds would go
Mm.
to an organization. Could be a local organization, could be a national or international, even regional, right? And the kids were experiencing it, and I saw really quickly, you saw the kids who were just like, I know I'm going to do well in this class. I'm going to go ahead and ride coattails. I mean, we had like the marketing people, the finance people, the sales people, all this. And as a matter of fact, one of the students that was an insane salesperson was Derek Griffin, my
I
first,
was like, I remember this.
the first person on the podcast that time YouTube channel. So, and it was experiential learning. And, all said and done, I think we raised probably not just one year, overall, well over $100,000 for organizations and different things like that. But I felt like a teacher who wasn't heard, right? Like you're
Mm.
doing these things, the community's thanking you, leadership at that time probably had their hands full, and I was a little bit arrogant, but I was like, guys, we're doing this. Our kids, this is amazing. And, I think a little bit of arrogance, but a little bit of, hey, let's go. And when I saw what Brandon brought to that, I was like, now I know I'm doing the right thing, So
Mhm.
I think that's what really hit. But I can tell you almost every one of the students that I'm still connected with in those projects, they'll remember their t-shirt. They remember what they designed. Either they loved it or hated it because there was a voting and they're like, oh, we should have gone this one or whatever. But we had the checks on the wall, like we printed out big checks and different things like that. But they remember that experience. And I'm telling you, Ali, some of them fought back hard. They hated coming to class every day because there was not really a grade. And it was I mean, I broke some rules, I was like, okay, well, we'll try. And grading was very difficult in that class
Yeah.
because I'm like, do I give that person's grade to somebody else, like in the class, a manager or something? So, funny thing was, I just ran into, we took a trip to Zurich, um, the headquarters in Chicago area, not Switzerland, which is funny. And we took students there to kind of see what it was all about and all the different areas in Zurich, and it's up in Schaumburg, Illinois. One of the leaders walked up to me there from one of the leaders in that project years ago. She was like, "Mr. Hostrawser, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, well, I know what you're doing here. You're probably running the place. And the guy next to her, they must have been on a team. He was like, oh, you know her. So it was just kind of funny. So, yeah, these full circles happen, but man, it's the experiential like working, like learning from work was huge with what Brandon said. And that's like, how can we build more of that? So,
I know. I, not everyone, you know, is super self-reflective or like knows in the moment that like these are skills that are gonna benefit, me later. I don't know if it was just like my natural bend or curiosity. But like I mentioned this briefly at the end of last week's episode that I I was a very academic student. I was also a very athletic student. I played junior
mhm,
Olympic volleyball and I worked. Like I was busy.
mhm,
Because we were talking about like, high school students, they get up and they have their whole day planned and like after school and evenings and weekends and everything. And it's like, I grew up pre-social media and like I mean I had the internet, but it was young. Okay, I'm older than Google, but
me
not by like
too.
a ton. Um, so it's like there was this it was busy, but I think it's like in a different level now. I didn't feel like overwhelmed. Like I knew all of these experiences were building towards what I wanted. That's not necessarily like how everyone views work or like I babysat starting at age 11
Mhm.
and because I wanted a car when I was 16. Okay, like I was like I want a car and I knew the only way I was going to get it is if I saved money for it. Not everyone like is that much of a planner at age 11, but the point is that like I knew that like the people that I met and the networking, and then like when I worked a waitressing job in high school and in college, and then I worked at Walgreens and in college and did other jobs, I knew it was all building skills beyond like the face value of the work,
Hmm.
right? Like I
Yes.
was like I to this day still advocate that everyone should work in a restaurant, food industry, and everyone
Yeah.
should work retail because like it's so beneficial to know what are people like before and after they get fed and what are people like when they're buying things. Like there's so much to learn
Hmm.
in an operation like that. Like I mean Brandon was talking about like when he was working at Ponderosa, like they could be asking him, what was the leadership style? What was the management style? And like, for example, I worked in a very chaotic restaurant, management, ownership, small business. It was wild. I and other people were like managing the managers and owners, right? It was chaos.
Yeah.
But then, like, when I worked at Walgreens, I actually I think I got hired because when I was being interviewed, I asked the manager, like I was asking him more questions than he was asking me. And he
Hmm.
found that interesting. But I
Yeah.
knew to do that from other work experiences. And I remember working with him and I'd be like, well, why are we doing this? Like we always had to face the store at the end of the night. And he was very particular and like it was he always got recognized for how clean and polished his store was. And it was important to him. But he used that time when he did it to talk to his employees and get to know them. So he was strategic. And I asked him why he did it, right? Like so I knew the purpose behind this seemingly like mundane task where you're making all the product look really nice and to the front of all of the rows. And to this day, when I walk into a retail store, I look at how it's faced. I look at how the product placement is and that tells me a lot about what they care
Yeah.
about and what the management cares about and like
Hmm.
and everything. So it's like you can help kids. Like even if they're working in an ice cream shop, they're cleaning cars, they're raking lawns, they're like it doesn't matter what the job and work is. It's like how is it helping them develop skills and then showing kids because they're not all of them are not like me, you, Brandon, where we can see that bigger picture. And so I think that line, we need to value the learning from all work, opens up so much for everybody, whoever's listening to this podcast at any level. And especially employers, when we're talking about internships, like you need to value whatever work you're giving like to an opportunities for high school students, college students, entry level workers, like et cetera. Like there is value in it. And if you know the value, if
Hmm.
you understand the value of it and can articulate it, like that's a huge recruitment strategy,
Yeah.
a huge recruitment strategy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot there, but like that's what I was thinking about when Brandon was talking. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, there's so much
Yep.
value.
This episode of the Disrupt Education podcast is brought to you by UScience BrightPath, the next generation platform helping students make personalized decisions as they move from education to career.
If we truly want students prepared for life after high school, we can't rely on outdated, interest-only guidance to navigate a dynamic career future. UScience starts with aptitude discovery, helping students build a deeper understanding of who they are and how they're wired to succeed. From there, students create plans, develop in-demand skills, validate them through industry-recognized certifications, and connect directly with employers.
The result? Intentional pathways with real opportunity.
UScience is the only platform bringing all of this together at scale, which is why we at Disrupt Education Podcast are proud to partner with them.
Learn more at uscience.com/disrupteducation-podcast. Request a demo and let them know you heard about UScience right here. Because I think most people who are happy, financially well off, and or are building their own brand do that, right? So they've already figured it out. They gamify things. So going back, actually, what got me my first job was me saying, this might be a little bit controversial now, but I had perfect attendance in high school.
Oh,
And I mean, I get it. There's
yep.
wellness and there's these things, and I don't want to. And I said this before, but that's what got me my first job. They were like, "Wait, what?" And I was a junior in high school at the time. It's like I haven't missed a day. I only missed one day actually in high school. So, like, and they were like, "Oh, okay, reliable. He's going to show up." Okay, that's half the battle, right? And in that job, I was a car porter at the old Mahoney Chevrolet and Oldsmobile dealership in Walkerton, Indiana. Shout out to the Mahoney family. He actually, the owner who owned a couple of dealerships was, here and there, and you didn't really talk to him. I was like, a junior in high school. But I remember out front, like I was just kind of sweeping the front sidewalk, and he goes, "No, no, no, no," totally decked out in his three-piece suit. And he was like, "No, no, no, let me show you how to sweep." He grabbed it from me, and he literally, and I was like, "Oh, this guy cares that much about his business, right?" Like, it wasn't like, "Hey, jerk, you're not doing your job." Like, he's like, "Let me show you." And I think that mindset is why that person, why Mr. Mahoney was successful, right? He knew the value of teaching somebody else rather than just, top downing it. So the other thing that we did there is we gamified it. And I know that, we've had guests before. I've heard a lot of different stories about in mundane, like kind of businesses, you gamify it. So we would, on rainy days on a car lot, and it wasn't a huge car lot. I mean, we were talking, I don't know, maybe 50 to 70 cars at the most, which is not that big of a car lot these days. Um, when it would rain, me and the other porter would run out and we'd start washing the cars. We were like, let's just
Mhm.
wash these things off. And then when the rainstorm went by, because we were on the other side of Lake Michigan, there'd be a lot of, cold fronts go through with storms and stuff. So it'd be quick rain. And luckily, we never got struck by lightning. That's interesting. But we had competitions. He had half the lot, I had the other half of the lot, and we would see how many we could suds up and get rinsed off. I mean, we had a truck out there with a water tank on it. But like, that's the thing. And then the other thing is like, we would talk to techs. Like, I found out how, and this is pre-YouTube. You say you're pre-Google, I'm pre-YouTube. So, but this was like they teach you, okay, this is how you change a tire. I remember I would pull tires off of rims, and then, rechange those out. They taught me how to like fix a puncture in a tire, changing oil and all this stuff. So like, yeah, you got to be curious, and it just makes life so much more fun. And like I said, you start to think I can learn something here. Even, my job was to wash cars and actually move them around on a lot. It, that mindset that Brandon's talking about, and actually you attach what Christy is saying about work-based learning, right? So Christy Valesky, so you take the mindset of, learning from work is where it's at, and then you figure different strategies. And I think definitely that's what Christy Valesky brings to the table, right? Like work-based learning. We show the video, right? This is what it looks like. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just it's not a have to, it's a get to, and you get that in your head that I get to do this at the job, um, rather than I have to, and it changes your whole world. Um, I think that's how I got this far in education, because there's some crazy things in education where people are burning out and different things like that. But I get a blank slate, every semester, every year, whatever, to try new things and learn with my students, right? So, I mean, I'm working, but I'm learning while I'm working. So, yeah, I really, in the numbers
Oh
that
yeah.
Brandon was putting out there, again, total numbers guy, and I think that's what drew me to the session that he did 10 years ago. But now I'm just like, wait, just to get to 5%. And then you look at those numbers and it's not that hard. It's almost like, why are we not doing this? Why are we not offering students at that level, the college level, who want internships? Wouldn't our workforce be that much better? Wouldn't our GDP and all those data points that politicians love, and really, I mean, people living better, wouldn't they improve? I'm like,
I mean, we didn't go there completely on his episode, but I mean, I would ask the question of like, why do we need higher ed if the
yeah,
metric
I kind of went
is
there a little bit.
invaluable? Went there a little bit, but
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, if the grades are meaningless and they're inflated, and like they aren't used for employers.
Hmm.
Like, all I'm saying is there is a huge opportunity for different pathways to get over this business model, because it's a business model of college. And it's like, I'm not anti-college,
Right.
but I am anti people wasting their time and money on something that they don't need.
Hmm.
And I'm just saying, like, if if the reports and people aren't like getting in like the skills that they need from the traditional college route, then like I would advocate, and like a lot of parents and a lot of our generation are questioning that. You're
Hmm.
questioning that right now with one of your kids. Sorry to put that, but I think you are, because it's like
Yeah.
staring, you're staring down, a couple $100,000, and it's like, what are we getting out of it? Like, I needed a degree
Hmm.
on to become a teacher. That was the route. And I loved college. Like, I loved that experience. I learned a ton. Were there a lot of classes though that I did not need and I could have like not done and been an awesome teacher? Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%, especially my undergraduate, because I did a master's program, a 1 year master's program. Because at the time in college, I wasn't planning on being a teacher. I was planning on being a dentist, and then I switched it.
Hmm.
Both of those required degrees, so
Yeah.
like that worked out for me. But like I loved what Brandon presented, and if you're not sure and you don't want to go in debt, and like, but you really want the college experience, you can go to work and have your employer pay for it. I was like, man, businesses are doing what the military has done.
Hmm.
Like, I know doctors and dentists who they they served, right? Like, so you do like 4 years. Well, they put you through med school, they put you through dental school, and then you have a minimum of 4 years, but you come out like completely debt free from
Hmm.
undergraduate and med school. And you serve for your minimum amount, and then you can then go do what you want. And I know I have friends to this day, they're like, I could not live the lifestyle that I live now and have the freedoms that I have if I hadn't had it all paid for by effectively an employer, right?
Right.
Like, so I thought it was interesting that he's talking about Amazon, Target, Chipotle, Starbucks, like big brands,
Hmm.
in Google, like all this stuff, they're they are having these, educationally funded programs to go and get your degree. We'll pay for it because we want your time and you now. And if we go with what Brandon said at the end, we need to value the learning from all work. They're getting it.
Right.
But now it's like more employers have that opportunity. And man, the internship fact that he dropped of like 72% of employers hiring interns
Hmm.
have like the retention, like they hire interns, but the
Yep.
retention rate was 144 times more effective than just like throwing up a general application and hiring someone. How can you not be screaming at the podcast right now? I mean, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? If, like, look at this opportunity. Internships, work experiences, work integrated learning, work-based learning. Like, all the data's there. Brandon
Right.
just all down.
I can hear Jason Van Us screaming right now because like literally that's at the secondary level, that's where I learned from his speaking engagements and what he does is, if you are a community and you're paying taxes, like we don't have that data, right? That's college data. What
Yeah.
happens if, and I know we brought this up last week, what if we started earlier, right? Like what if those students are actually interning within their own community, and then even if they go off to college or whatever and then come back, What is that? Is that higher? I don't know. I mean, if I was a betting person, I'd probably say yes.
Yep.
But you're giving these students more and more opportunities. I love like, Brandon's the guy who's able to start like at the top, like when you're starting with Vogue and those businesses. And I love that they're seeing these things because, some of the businesses he mentioned, like Sotheby's, those are kind of like traditional businesses, but they're evolving, right? And that's how you stay alive. So, I would almost dare to say they'll probably yell at me. I'll probably get a call from the CEO of Vogue, but like they're kind of like, the ivory towers of these amazing businesses. But what Brandon just uncovered was, guess what? They are evolving underneath and they're working with, different ways to, talent pipeline or, supply chain of people. I know we're going to hear a lot of those things. So, but that's what I'm taking from this is, okay, so and before that episode last week, I did say I was in front of a class and we're giving presentations about our internship program, and I legitimately just spit it out and I said, your grades don't matter. And of course, there are a few shrieks in there, and it's a mindset change, and it's a statement that is very loaded, right? Grades do matter.
They
It is
do.
a signal, but you've got to tell people through what that signal means that you got an A or you have a good SAT score or something like that, right? And I always go back, and I know I've said this on past podcast, but where, I coached a student about, he had, I think it was an ACT. So his ACT score went from like a 25 to a 25, then to a 27. And I think he ended up, high 20s or low 30s. I don't know. But, and I just kept going, how? How did you do it? How did you do it? And then he started communicating his problem solving of how he studied. And I'm like, that's the secret sauce. No one cares about your number. It's that improvement. And you just explained how you learned better and faster and more efficiently to get a better outcome. Hello. Isn't that what every business and service and product wants you to have? So I think that's when I say like a test score then does matter, right? If you struggled or something like that. But I'll tell you what, Allie, I took plenty of high school classes that I didn't learn a thing in. And it wasn't the fact that that was on the teacher, it was me just not challenging myself. I
Hmm.
mean, it was legitimately, I would sit through classes and I would do enough to check the box to get like the A minus or whatever. Um, and I already had previous learning from some of these courses. So it was just like, you know how to play the game and you don't go in. And that's what I think what Brandon was unpacking, we have a lot of people who are unpacking, is when you experience something, you live it, you're in that moment, you're in
Mhm.
that work, you're in that project, and there are other eyes on it. There is a result. There are checkpoints. And it's not a grade or a scantron, if you will. Which I don't know. They should just outlaw Scantron. Why do we have that? We still have Scantron, by the way.
They got rid of my school before I left,
Oh
so
man. Well, I mean, there's digital Scantrons, like where you can, be on an iPad or whatever and do the same thing, only with no paper. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So anyway, like that experience and those types of things, and going all the way back to the t-shirt programs that I did, working with Robert Peplowski, Peppo coming in, working with our students, challenging them. They did a presentation. I still remember the presentation down, big shout out to Stagg High School, where they did the presentation of him moving to a different area and what the inside of a new Peppo's would look like. It actually has come to fruition. So if you're ever in Oak Lawn, you can check out their new sandwich shop down there. It's not quite, it's been there for about a year now. But the visions that the kids had and the use cases were pretty close to what happened. And that was without guidance. The students actually did all their work. But I still remember we had administrators in there. We had some people in there, like maybe some school board members and community members, and they were shocked at how well these students could do this work. And it was because they were held accountable. Like we told them this is the day you're going to be in front of people and you're going to propose your projects. Were there people who didn't do a lot of work? Of course there was. But there were people, the majority of the students jumped in and went at it. And, you know, to Brandon's, to his credit of what he was talking about last week is those are innovative ways that we can just do work within a classroom and make it real. And then
Hmm.
just let's learn from it. I mean, it's working as learning.
I mean, he's talking about, the scale of internships. He brought up the stats of like what it would take and funding and like all really, really great things. I can hear, employers and whatnot. Some of them are like, yes, like, okay, this is our moment. Like, we can
Hmm.
totally do this. And then other ones being like, well, they're untested. That's these kids, like, what do we know? It's like what, and that is where I mean, I have to advocate for you science. And like, if you
Yep.
got data backing this kid, right, that's
Yep.
better than grades. It's better than grades because it's going to tell you what they're apt at. And like, then you can have, and the student may not even know that that
Hmm.
is a career or something that they would even be good at. They've never even heard of it, etc. Like, you open up so many connection points that you would otherwise not have. And I think you need something for the innovators, like they're going to do it, but to get this to scale, you're going to have tools in place that help kids know what they're good at and be able to articulate it, and then and you coach and guide them, and then employers have to understand, like the two industry, like education and industry, they have to talk to one another. They have to be
Hmm.
talking the same language. There can't be this disconnect. So it's like, as Brandon said, he's like, internship is the term that everybody like understands, but these work integrated learning has a myriad of things that it could be. And
Yep.
I think, if we break down some of the barriers and the resistance around it of just knowing what kids are good at, helping them understand what they're good at in the language that industry and employers speak, I think a lot of the resistance would come down. Maybe that's too simplistic, but I'm just thinking of, you got that job because of, you didn't maybe articulate it as being reliable and like timely, and you show up.
Hmm.
But now we have the tools to like coach people on those strengths and then help them get the work. And if we value all work, then we're not going to downplay like, oh, it's your quote unquote washing cars.
Yeah.
You're like, you learned a lot from that.
Hmm.
Like, and oh, I was technically, a cashier associate. I don't even remember what the actual title was at Walgreens. I learned so much from that job. And I like, again, everybody I think should work retail and everybody should work in food.
Yeah.
And like, I see the value of it. You don't have to have like a long experience, but it will open your eyes to the world in ways that you would otherwise not see.
Yep.
You can't imagine it when you are on the consumer end versus on the working end. And you
Hmm.
get a lot more empathy. You get a lot more, like, you just relatability. There's so many like what is the word I'm looking for? Like, they're not going to be skills. They're just like intangibles
Yeah.
that you get as a human to relate to other humans in this world. And
Hmm.
like, that's the value of work, and that's how I think we disrupt education.
Exactly, exactly. Thinking, wrapping this one up, it really is interesting because I think back on number one, I really love Ponderosa. I don't know why, it was funny, but he said frozen steak, so that kind of like freaked me out a little bit. They did have a killer. I was like, um, but one of the things that I always ask people, and I'm down with it in food service. I was a bartender and a bar manager for a little while. And you do, yeah, you learn, you have to learn, otherwise you're dead in the water. Um, and it reminded me of, when students say, yeah, I just work at McDonald's or I just work at fast food or whatever, I usually ask, what is the number one selling food item there? And they stop and they think about it, and then everybody usually, Chipotle or wherever. Um, Now I'm getting hungry, but they're like they'll tell you, and then
Yeah.
I ask, well, why do you think that is? And usually it's like, oh, well, it's because of this, or it's good, or it's the price point, or everything. I'm like, now you're thinking work is learning, right? You're really thinking. One of my favorite is the people who work at grocery stores and they're checkout or baggers, right? So, and even if they're bagging, they're like, what are some of what is the thing that you see people buy the most?
Hmm.
And they'll tell you, I mean, it's always like, okay, so it's usually like milk or maybe eggs or something like that. And I'm like, well, where's that located in the store? It's always in the back. And I'm like, why? Why do you guys think it's in the back? And they stop and think, and are like, oh my gosh, they want people to walk all the way through the store so they buy other things. I'm like, now you're thinking like a business person. So these are the opportunities that we have, and so I love these conversations. I know we're going to have a lot more conversations. I am so into the aptitudes, though. Like, think about it. This is my final thought. Sorry, I'm rambling here a little bit, but it's like the sport aspect that Brandon brought up, right?
Yep.
I've got really good friends. Their kids, they were baseball players. Their dad was an amazing baseball coach. Shout out to Coach Dara. May he rest in peace. Five-time, like he actually worked with a league of their own. When they were filming that, my buddies got pictures with Madonnas and stuff. But anyway, so great baseball player. Now his grandson. Again, he's since passed, but my buddy's kid, they're going through their baseball stuff, and they go to a couple of different places where they do data points, and some of it's not even baseball. It's like running, all these different things that is now a different data point. And again, that's why I see aptitudes, right? And we've talked about use science, talking about that aptitude going deep. Now, can we actually now use that data, which I believe we can, I know we can, to really help place students, younger people, anybody really for that matter, in areas that they're going to excel the most for themselves and for a company, but most importantly for customers and for their families to succeed. So I think Brandon hit on something there with the sports, but we'll keep going. Want to thank everybody for listening. Again, hit that disrupteducationpodcast.com. You can connect with us. We got a lot of things coming up, a lot of greatness. Super excited about this continuing. CTE is coming gangbusters, as Jason Van Nuss. So we have to keep throwing out Jason out there. So because he's probably driving somewhere right now listening to this. So keep your eyes on the road, dude. But thank you all for being great listeners. Just spread it out, man. We're giving these kind of, I would say, micro lessons or micro ideation sessions for you in education, whether you're now in the work world or you're in the academic world. We're merging them. So let's keep this up. So for Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Disrupt Education Podcast. If this episode sparked an idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see education differently, well, that's exactly why we're here. We're highlighting real stories and bold ideas shaping the future of learning. A quick thank you to our sponsor, UScience BrightPath, the next generation platform helping students make personalized decisions as they move from education to career. If you're serious about connecting students to real opportunity, head to uscience.com/disrupteducation-podcast. Request a demo and let them know you heard about UScience right here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. For more episodes and clips and ways to connect, you can always visit disrupteducationpodcast.com. I'm Peter Hostrawser. Keep disrupting. We'll see you next time on the podcast.